Hello and welcome to Somali National TV and Radio Mogadishu. With me here today for a short interview is Ambassador Nickolas K, Special Representative of UN Secretary General. The Ambassador Nickolas K, please welcome to Radio Mogadishu and Somali National TV.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
It's really an honor to have this opportunity with an interview. Your Excellency, today UNSOM is marking one year anniversary. What do you reflect for the whole year, and you give us your assessment for that whole year working in Somalia and the situation in general?
Well, thank you very much indeed. Yes, a year ago the federal government of Somalia was asking the United Nations to send a political mission to Somalia and to be one door for the government to knock on in helping to coordinate international assistance to Somalia. Exactly 1 year ago, I arrived in Mogadishu on the first day of the mission, and I'm very pleased to say that in the last 12 months we can see a lot of progress that has happened in the country, and also a lot of progress in terms of building the United Nations presence here in Mogadishu and across Somalia, where we have offices in Baidoa, in Kismayo, and Garowe as well. Okay.
Can you explain the role of UNSOM?
Yeah.
Exactly. Somalis we're very actually much aware of UNBOS because it's been there quite some time. What has changed moving from UNBOS to UNSOM?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's changed is we are present now in Mogadishu and on the ground in Somalia with regional offices, and the United Nations has never had so many people working in Somalia for nearly 20 years. So this is a big step in terms of the UN presence and engagement. But the mission is also here much more now in a role to support your federal government and your federal parliament as it tackles some really big and exciting and important challenges. You as Somalis have decided that you would like to have democratic elections in 2016 across the whole of Somalia, in a new federal Somalia, which will mean forming federal member states and revising the constitution, all by 2016. Our job as the United Nations political mission is to help you to achieve that ambition. And that's not just the political ambition, it's also to help put the conditions in place for those elections in 2016 to happen. They can't happen successfully if there isn't security, if there isn't stability, if you don't have functioning institutions, if the people are not receiving services and basic benefits from being at peace. So our job as the United Nations is to help you to deliver all of that.
Is 2016 election realistic?
Absolutely. I said before, and I continue to say, it is ambitious, but it is achievable.
I'm going to come back to that again. You mentioned one door policy, and so far there are still actually some fragmented dealings with the Somali government coming from much more from the international community. Are you the one door? Is your office the only door to knock when it comes to supporting Somalia in terms of peace building, state building, and the 2016 vision?
I think Somalia has, the huge benefit and advantage of having many friends and many partners in the world. Somalia matters a lot to the African Union, it matters a lot to the Intergovernmental Organization for Development, IGAD, and it matters a lot to the League of Arab States and many other countries. So you are benefiting and advantaged to have a lot of people who are taking an interest in helping Somalia. So obviously all of those people and organizations will be doing their bit to help. and many of the European Union countries and the European Union itself. So the important thing is that there is as much coordination and partnership between those and the federal government, and that's where the United Nations, as the overarching international organization, can provide some help in coordinating and grouping people.
Well, I just want to know more and at least to reflect on the coordination level. So since there are several stakeholders in Somalia,
Sure.
Can you please tell us the coordination mechanism for UNSOM, AMISOM, IGAD and other international community towards Somalia? How do you coordinate?
The most important coordination mechanism is the one that the government of Somalia leads through the New Deal Compact, which was agreed in Brussels last September. And the New Deal Compact is a partnership compact between the government and people of Somalia and the international community. There is a body called the High Level Partnership Forum that meets at least twice a year. It's chaired by the President of Somalia, and I am the co-chair representing the international community. And it is through the New Deal Compact for Somalia architecture that the coordination with African Union, with European Union, with member states is most taking place.
Is New Deal actually compact materializing?
It is. I would say that it's been slower than anybody wanted or expected. Part of that has been here within Somalia. You had a change of government, which took 2 or 3 months of time over the December, January period to resolve, and so there was a bit of time that was lost there.
Right.
And the international partners have also taken some time to become familiar with and comfortable with what your government is doing in terms of public financial management, and I think that's all progressing well. And over the next 2 or 3 months, we really need to see the New Deal starting to deliver projects on the ground, and I'm confident that we will see some important flagship programs in education, in health, and in other areas, which over the next few months will become much more visible.
Great, I will leave it there. Recently, UNSOM, IGAD, and EU issued a statement toward its current political situation. The President talked about it today, you talked about it today in Somalia. Some MPs actually went on the other side criticizing those statements in support of the political stability and unity, as you talked about it. And more broadly in the political, they picture it as a political intervention where you, AMISOM and EU actually are interviewing the process, the actual process of the Somalis. So what's your reaction to that?
Yes, I mean, I think that's an important point. And as you say, what Somalia and the federal government have been looking for is coordination between the international community. They find it easier to deal with international partners when they're speaking with one voice and they're proceeding in the same direction. So certainly the statement that was issued by IGAD, the European Union, and the United Nations, I think was a good example of the international community speaking with one voice and trying to be coordinated in its help for Somalia. Now, a lot of the issues that are at stake in this political crisis are definitely political issues which are the business of the Parliament and the federal government to resolve. But the international community can't be blind to the fact that these also have an impact on state building and peace building in Somalia. And the United Nations Security Council has mandated me and UNSOM to assist Somalia with state building and peace building. It's a mandate and a responsibility I take very seriously. I will always carry out my responsibility in full respect for the Somali leadership and ownership on these issues, but it's something on which I cannot turn my back on.
Great. Well, we're still coming back to your actually mandate. There are talks that UNSOM is actually spearheading to establish a new roadmap to actually make possible the 2016 election. Is that something on the process, or how will it be? I mean, how does that look like?
I think there's at least two things there. First, I mean, the vision for 2016 of having democratic elections based on a new federal constitution is a vision which Somali people have established for themselves. And the federal government organized last September a Vision 2016 conference here in Mogadishu, which set out its ambitious, if you like, roadmap for achieving that. So I think the first thing is to recognize this is very much a Somali led and owned and directed process. But I think the second thing that is worth recognizing is that international partners and friends of Somalia who are assisting economically, financially, politically, and in terms of security, where your African brothers and sisters are sacrificing their lives to secure you. Yes, they take a real interest in helping Somalia to progress to its vision for 2016. And we do believe that having a clear plan of what needs to happen by when in order to achieve those is important. And I know your president and your prime minister and many parliamentarians also think a clear plan is also necessary.
I know a lot of people create the perception that a new sort of, whether we call a 2016 version or a roadmap, is pretty much kind of taking the process back to the transitional times. So, and they're seeking more genuine and actually more creative solutions for the 2016 election to be possible. Do you think that is a genuine perception in a case?
I have no doubt that there is a perception from some of that, but I think it's the wrong perception. I think that a plan and a vision for 2016 is taking the country forward and not backwards. And that I do believe that it is in the benefit of all Somalis that there is a clear understanding of what has to happen, by when, and who has to do what, by when, to achieve the goals that you have set yourselves.
Exactly. I'm going to go a little bit on the federal system and the dealing with the federal government and regional status. To achieve an actual federal government in Somalia, what is the UNSOM take, and how is your office approaching that?
Indeed, it is part of our mandate and responsibility to assist the federal government in achieving this. And if we look at the glass, is it sort of half full or is it half empty? And I would say it's half full in terms of the progress in the last year. Your government has agreed on the interim Juba administration for 3 regions to come together eventually, probably into a federal member state. There is a process, as you know, very actively being pursued now with the Southwest delegations, 6 or 3 regions, and the government has been very clear on its position on that. And I really hope that in the next few days even, there will be an understanding reached between the delegations from both the 6 and the 3 regions about a way forward, which will open the door to being able to say that, yes, there is another interim administration for Southwest Somalia about to be in place. After that, the central regions are already advancing along their process of discussions and negotiations. So I think it is possible, and it is very important, that by the end of this year, by the end of 2014, that new map of a federal Somalia with interim regional administrations established, it's very important that that is there.
When it comes to the regional government, international organization is in some countries, actually. The international community, let me put it in this way, has a direct access or dealing. And a lot of parliamentarians and politicians in Somalia feel that undermines the federal government role to actually be active and actually move the process of federalism forward. Do you think that is actually there is a need to empower the federal government to handle state building through the regional administration?
Absolutely. The federal government is the federal government of all of Somalia, and it deserves and merits the respect and role that goes with that. The international community, I am sure, is absolutely supporting and backing the federal government and its primary role. But in a federal system as well, interim regional administrations will have increasing responsibility for providing services and security and justice at the local level. And obviously they don't have the capacity and will need support for that to happen. Some of it will come through the federal government, and some of it may come directly to the interim regional administrations. Always, always in coordination and consultation. And this is, again, the New Deal Compact. This is the architecture which is for the whole of the federal government, and other parts, for example, Puntland, and eventually the interim Juba administration, Southwest administration, will all be a part of that New Deal Compact, where donors will sit with the federal government, with the interim regional administration, and work out what assistance can best be provided to those regions.
And the New Deal is giving provision, is actually treating actually regional states like Puntland and Jubaland pretty much close to the provision it gives to Somaliland.
No, I think the relationship between Puntland and Mogadishu is very, very different, and the treatment under the New Deal Compact is very, very different, and certainly with Juba interim administration as well. And I think we had very recently, in the last few weeks, a successful round table in Garowe, which was bringing together the Puntland government and the federal government and donors to discuss exactly the best way through the New Deal Compact to support people in Puntland.
I wanted to ask about the UN monitoring group report. There are a lot of questions relating the way information is gathered and the authenticity and the credibility of that report. And a lot of Somali politicians and the government itself have been actually making this case and complaining about the actual report. I would love if you can explain how is this process worked on, and the role your office plays, and the future actually monitoring group report.
Yeah, no, very good. I mean, the Somalia-Eritrea monitoring group is, of course, a group of independent experts appointed by the Sanctions Committee of the Security Council. It is independent from the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia and from any other UN agency or fund or program in Somalia. We are mandated to assist them in terms of practical support, but they operate entirely independently from us. Their reports go directly to the Security Council. I see them after they are made public, and usually after your government has seen them. And
you always get complainers on that.
Well, there is. I mean, but I think so. So just to be very clear, they are an independent group who do their work. But I think it's also very important that people should focus really on not really sort of so much arguing over the fine detail or the process or whatever that goes into it. Look at the big picture. These are a group of experts who are there to try to ensure that the United Nations sanctions are fully implemented and respected, and that requires respect for the import of arms and weapons. Nobody wants to see Somalia flooded with uncontrolled amounts of arms and weapons. Nobody wants to see that. Somalis don't want to see that, and certainly the neighbouring countries, nobody wants to see that. So their job is to make sure that it's very clear what the government is importing, how they're looking after them, how they're controlling their stocks, and who they are issuing these weapons to. I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to be looking at.
Right. I like to come back to your office. UNSOM brought almost 400 Ugandan special army soldiers to protect the UN personnel. People that believe this undermine the trust building and the actually building the quality of the Somali security forces in general, in the sense that you are adding special forces to the mission, and actually the Somali National Army and the Somali people that can actually do the work, if trusted, is actually our role. So.
Well, I think, the Security Council decided that in order to give the best guaranteed protection to UN staff working in Somalia, that it was best provided by a guard unit, provided by a troop contributing country. But that in no means diminishes the importance of building up the Somali National Security Forces, Somali National Army, Somali National Police, Justice, and that is very, very much work which UNSOM, the UN Assistance Mission in Somalia, is doing. I'm working very, very closely with your federal government colleagues, with the Police Commissioner, with the Somali National Army. Last November, the Security Council approved a logistic support package for the Somali National Army. This is a very groundbreaking thing to be doing. So food, transport, medical, evacuation, rations, all of that can now be provided through the UN for the Somali National Army when they're conducting joint operations with AMISOM. That's very important, and it really is something which the United Nations has not done in the same way in any other country. And this is because we recognize that eventually Somalia relies and will rely on its own Somali National Security Forces, so we must build them up.
Somalia will rely, but will the UN or internationalists rely on the Somali actually security forces?
Absolutely. The UN doesn't want to be here forever at all, and I'm sure the African Union and AMISOM don't wish to be here forever. Somalia as a country needs to be able to secure itself.
Great. Your predecessor, actually, His Excellency Agustin Mahiga, succeeded in ending the transition in Somalia. Can we hope that that Somalia will hold fair and free election in 2016 and that to be elected?
That is certainly the wish, I believe, of the Somali people and the Somali government, that there should be free and fair elections in 2016 across all of Somalia. And I can certainly say that I will play my best to help to achieve that.
Finally, I just want to thank you, but is there any last thing you want to say to the Somali public? Or?
I think my message, certainly to the Somali people, is to say an enormous thank you for the great hospitality and friendship they've extended to the United Nations and to UNSOM in our first year. So we're very, very grateful for that. And I think together, working with the Somali people, Somali institutions, international partners, the United Nations, I am sure that we can deliver what everybody wants, which is a more peaceful, more united, more stable Somalia.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.